Hey guys, what's going on? So I'm back at you guys with another Procreate time lapse and an art discussion. So, I've been thinking about this a lot, and some artists are simply storytellers. Simply, they just love to tell stories and they love to create scenes and they love to draw scenes from different movies and stuff like that. And some artists are just designers, And when I say just, I mean majority. I mean the most of the most part. You look in their gallery and it's a bunch of designs. I'd like to think I'm both, but I'd say I lean more towards being a designer because I feel like the story should come after the design, right? So the difference between these two things is that one is more about emotion and feeling and setting and making you kind of feel something, right? One is more like that, and then one is more about making you understand something. Making you understand that this character is this tall, or this character has this weapon, or this character, wears these specific kind of items of clothing, they have this hairstyle. In a storytelling piece, you might miss some of that because half of the character might be behind a counter, or, the character might be at a strange angle, or the character might be sat down and you can't see their legs, or it might be framed from behind the character and you might not see the character's face. Versus a design shot where you're trying to kind of express, even if you're doing it in a cool illustrative way, right? And which is kind of how I try to do a lot of my design. You're still trying to convey the fact that this character has these design aspects, and that's like your main point. I'm not trying to kind of show you a storyline. I'm not trying to convey to you something that I don't think you need to know. I'm just trying to show you this character looks like this is how they look in an environment, and this is their kind of design cues and such and so forth, versus storytelling where it's more about, so we have a designed character already, we have a setting that we already designed, we have all of these things that are already in place, this is the scene. For example, a design is a character kind of like when you play a video game, you're on the character select screen and you see the character's design, and the setting is when the character gets to the fight and you're fighting against the other characters in the game, right? That's the story. The story is this character versus this character in this environment. That's the story. The design is select your character, select the character's color, and I basically use Street Fighter as my reference, but hey, sue me, Capcom. Anyway, but they are different, but they feed each other. As I said, design does feed character, and sometimes, it does feed story, and sometimes story can feed design. Sometimes you can make a random scene, right? You can say, okay, I've got this character, I've designed this character, now's the time to kind of get Photoshop open and start like texture bashing an environment out of nothing, and then all of a sudden ideas start coming to your head and you start saying, okay, this is where the character comes from, and they're in this place because of this and this, and I've experienced this myself, and I've done this a bunch of times, but it all comes down to being, design minded and story minded at the same time, understanding that your character is just a conduit to tell a story like any other character is, just like you have a story just like everybody else does in the world. And everyone's story would probably be pretty good, except for people that never leave their house. But that's still a story to some people. How do they deal with not leaving? How do they deal with, not knowing about what's going on outside? That's a story. And you could make that into a really good story, if you flipped it in a good way. So everyone does have a story, and, every person is a character. If you look around, right? You would have much better designs if you just went outside for one day and went to your city center or went to your town center and just took photographs of people and just made them into characters, maybe changed their skin to purple and stuff like that, and maybe altered some of the colors of their clothing. I guarantee you've got a whole cast of characters after you do that you can come up with unique stories. You could even change their lives a little bit and make them cooler, and you all of a sudden got a whole cast of characters. You could take your friendship group and do the same thing. I know I could. One of my friends records music at his house, right? And the people that come through, all different shapes, sizes, everything, different attitudes, different hairstyles, different skin tones. If I was to, photograph everyone and draw them, it'd be crazy. It'd be a whole cast of characters from a manga or something, or from a comic book, and it'd be like, yeah, this is really good, because everyone is a character, you know, and everything is a setting, and every setting can tell a story, and that's how you have to look at it. So in my opinion, design should come first, and then story should come second, but they can both drive each other. Design can really drive story, and story can drive design. It's so strange how it works, but it's absolutely true. It can work both ways, you know. For example, right now I'm working on a webcomic story. I haven't started the illustrative process but I've been writing this for years. I've been going back and forth with ideas for a while, right? And I've never really took it too seriously, but specifically today I woke up and I was like, yeah, we need to kind of iron this out, because I wanted to start a webcomic last year, but I was a bit busy. I overestimated my output level when I had my second child. I really didn't realize how much extra effort I'd be putting in. Anyway, so I've been going around and you know, with this story, and I had these designs, and now I've realized I don't really like the designs. I think the story dictates something differently. I mean, something different from the designs I have, you know. And I've really come to the realization that an older design works a lot better for the story that I have, because the character in the story is the design I had was not representative of this character's emotions at all, you know. So that's the situation. The situation is I've gone through a few different design stages, and the story is telling me, no, this design does not work for this. You know, the tone of this story, this guy doesn't work. He's too happy for this story, or he's too glowy, or he's too child looking for this story. We need something a little bit more saucy for this story, a little bit more edge, you know. And that's one thing, you know. And also the setting, I'm thinking the setting needs to be very kind of a lot of browns, a lot of robust kind of like cream colors. But before I had all these kind of blues and grays and industrial kind of, and it's like, no, that's not what the story dictates. So sometimes the story can really guide how you design the world, you know. So it's not just one or the other, it's both. But usually there will be a story before design, but the design will be kind of like, the design will flesh it out, you know. Like for example, Tolkien describes stuff in his books, right? If you don't know who Tolkien is, he's the guy that wrote Lord of the Rings, Silmarillion, The Hobbit. He's that guy. He describes a bunch of things in his books, but when you watch these lore videos about it, and they're really good, so you should watch them. Shout out to Men of the West, shout out to Nerd of the Rings, shout out to the Exploring series, all these channels that kind of go over it. And let's not forget about Civilization Z. These channels are fantastic. But when you watch videos about it, you need visual representation, because you're not sure of how these characters really look, right? And when you get that visual representation, you're like, yeah, that really matches up, because the people that are drawing these have really looked at Lord of the Rings and all these kind of other things, and they've gone backwards and tried to make designs that fit how it would have felt at the time, you know. And that's how you have to really look at it. So it's a weird loop of story and design, but essentially design is kind of like the flesh out, and story is kind of like the spirit of the thing, you know. Design's the body, story's the spirit, you know. And I know it's a loose term. I mean, I know it sounds crazy. I wouldn't call it a loose term. I know it sounds strange, but that's what it is. Story is the spirit, the soul, and design is the body, right? Because essentially a lot of things you can take story beats, you know, and a lot of people would say plot beats, and plot is kind of like story, but plot is more straightforward. So plot is like they went to the bank, where a story is like they went to the bank because she needed to get revenge for when her father got killed when he tried to rob the bank, you see. Whereas plot is like they went to the bank, they robbed the bank, right? So you could reskin the plot of something with a slightly different story, and it has the same plot as something else, you know, and just redesign all the elements. And you see a lot of Hollywood films doing that nowadays, which is strange. But we'll make another video about plot another time. But thank you for watching, guys. I really appreciate everything you guys do, the comments and all of that kind of stuff, and I appreciate just the fact that people will take time to listen to stuff like this. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the time lapse, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.